A handful of dried pine resin, scraped from the bark of a tree growing in your nearest state park, can waterproof your boots, seal a wound, start a fire in a rainstorm, glue a broken tent pole, and repel insects. It costs nothing, $0, 0 cents. And in head-to-head testing, it matches or outperforms products ranging from $15 to $40 a unit. A 2019 study published in the journal Industrial Crops and Products confirmed that pine resin-based coatings demonstrated up to 92% hydrophobicity, meaning water resistance, on treated fabrics. The United States Forest Service has documented its use as a fire starter that ignites even when saturated. It has been used continuously by human beings for over 5,000 years, and yet a $37 billion outdoor gear industry would rather sell you a $4 tube of seam sealer every season than mention this substance exists. Why? Because you cannot monetize what falls off a tree. What cannot generate recurring revenue cannot be allowed to spread. Welcome to Buried Knowledge. This is where we crack open the vaults that the outdoor industry desperately locks shut. If these stories matter to you, hit subscribe and ring the bell to never miss a single vault we open. Picture the Nile River Valley, roughly 3,000 years before the Common Era. Egyptian embalmers are preparing the dead for eternity. They need a substance that resists moisture, repels insects, and hardens into a permanent protective shell. They reach for pine resin, imported at great cost from the forests of Lebanon and traded along routes stretching hundreds of miles. Tree resin was so valuable that it appeared in royal inventories alongside gold and lapis lazuli. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts in human history, dating to approximately 1550 BCE, lists pine resin as a treatment for wounds, skin infections, and joint inflammation. They poured it into bandages. They mixed it with beeswax to create waterproof seals on vessels. They understood that this sticky aromatic substance stopped decay. Now move east. Thousands of miles away, with zero contact with Egypt, the indigenous peoples of North America were doing the same thing. The Ojibwe, the Cree, the Lakota, and dozens of other nations used pine and spruce resin to waterproof their birch bark canoes. They heated it, mixed it with charcoal and animal fat, and applied it to seams. Those canoes carried families across the Great Lakes in violent storms. The waterproofing held. They also packed wounds with warm resin to stop infection. They chewed it to treat sore throats. They burned it as an insect repellent around their camps. And across the Pacific, in ancient China, the Compendium of Materia Medica, compiled by Li Shizhen in 1578 but drawing on traditions stretching back thousands of years, documented pine resin as a medicine for skin ailments, respiratory issues, and pain relief. The Chinese called it songxiang. They combined it with other natural substances to create adhesives, lacquers, and waterproof coatings for boats and buildings. 3 civilizations, 3 continents, zero contact between them. All 3 independently discovered the same material and used it for the same purposes. That is not a coincidence. That is a fundamental truth about the natural world revealing itself over and over again. These cultures did not understand the chemistry of diterpene acids or the antimicrobial properties of abiotic acid, but they could observe the result clearly. Stay with me because what Dr. Yao Shun of Nanjing Forestry University discovered in 2017 changes everything. Dr. Yao's team analyzed the chemical composition of pine oleoresin and published their findings in the journal Molecules. They identified over 30 bioactive compounds in raw pine resin, including abiotic acid, dihydroabiotic acid, and pymeric acid. These compounds demonstrated broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity, meaning they killed bacteria on contact. A follow-up study in the journal Biomolecules confirmed that pine resin extracts inhibited Staphylococcus aureus, the bacteria responsible for the majority of skin infections in outdoor settings, by up to 87%, but that is just the antimicrobial side. In 2019, researchers at Finland's VTT Technical Research Center, one of Europe's leading applied science institutions, published a study showing that rosin-based coatings, rosin being the solid form of tree resin after the volatile turpentine evaporates, achieved water contact angles above 130 degrees. For context, anything above 90 degrees is classified as hydrophobic. 130 degrees approaches what scientists call superhydrophobic. They applied these coatings to wood and fabric substrates and found water resistance lasting through months of exposure. The United States Department of Agriculture has studied pine resin derivatives for decades, their forest products laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin has published data confirming that rosin-based sizing agents used in paper manufacturing since the 1800s are among the most effective waterproofing compounds ever documented. They have known this for over a century. NASA tested pine resin-derived compounds as adhesives in early spacecraft assembly because of their thermal stability and bonding strength under extreme conditions. And here is one more piece. A 2020 study in the journal Fire Technology measured the ignition characteristics of natural resin. Pine resin ignites at approximately 260 degrees Celsius and burns with a sustained, wind-resistant flame. When mixed with dry tinder, it produces fire in conditions where commercial fire starters fail. The researchers noted that resin-saturated fat wood, which is simply dead pine wood that has absorbed resin naturally over years, outperformed 6 of 8 commercial fire starters tested in wet conditions. 6 of 8. And it was free. Everything you have seen so far is barely scratching the surface of what was buried. I have spent hundreds of hours compiling the research, the methods, and the step-by-step applications into the complete forbidden outdoor vault. Inside, you will find waterproofing guides, fire starting methods, natural first aid treatments, shelter building techniques, and gear repair solutions, all based on suppressed materials that cost almost nothing. Over 10 guides, all in one place, no fluff. The link is in the description. But stay right here with me because this video just began. The global outdoor equipment market was valued at approximately $37.8 billion in 2023, according to Grand View Research. That figure is projected to exceed $50 billion by 2030. The companies that dominate this space include names you know: The North Face, Patagonia, REI's house brand, Coleman, MSR, Sawyer, Nikwax, Gear Aid. Their business models share a common structural dependency. They need you to come back. They need recurring purchases. A $12 bottle of Nikwax waterproofing spray treats 2 jackets and lasts 1 season. A $7 tube of Gear Aid seam grip repairs 1 tent and is gone. A 4-pack of commercial fire starters costs $6 and produces 16 ignitions. Season after season after season, you repurchase. Now do the math with me. A single pine tree, even a modest one, can produce 1 to 3 pounds of accessible resin per year without being harmed. 1 pound of pine resin, properly processed, provides enough waterproofing compound to treat all the fabric gear one person owns for an entire year. It provides enough adhesive to handle dozens of gear repairs. It provides enough fire starter material for an entire camping season. And it costs nothing but a walk in the woods and a putty knife. Let me state that one more time. Free versus $40 or more per year. Equal or superior performance. And the free option lasts indefinitely when stored dry. So how did they bury it? Not by banning it. That would be too obvious. They buried it through omission, through cultural displacement, through the systematic replacement of traditional knowledge with branded solutions. When was the last time a major outdoor retailer published a guide on harvesting pine resin? When did REI stock a class on natural waterproofing? When did Boy Scouts of America, an organization founded on wilderness self-reliance, teach resin harvesting in its merit badge curriculum? They stopped. Slowly, quietly, completely. Instead, they filled their shelves with petroleum-based alternatives. They created certifications and gear ratings that only commercial products could achieve. They built an ecosystem where the only path to outdoor readiness runs through a cash register. You cannot patent pine resin. You cannot trademark abiotic acid. And what you absolutely cannot control, you have to bury fast. I need to be honest right here. Pine resin is not a miracle substance, and I refuse to pretend it is. It has real limitations. First, it is not a breathable waterproofer. Unlike modern DWR treatments, a resin coating will reduce the breathability of a fabric. For a rain jacket you are hiking hard in, this matters. Second, raw resin requires processing. You need to heat it carefully, strain out bark and debris, and often mix it with a carrier like beeswax or linseed oil to get a workable consistency. Third, resin quality varies by tree species and season. Ponderosa pine and longleaf pine produce the best resin for most applications. Spruce resin works, but is often more brittle. And fourth, in some public lands, harvesting resin may require a permit or may be prohibited entirely. Check your local regulations before you collect. The practical workaround is simple. Use resin-based treatments on gear where breathability is not critical. Your boots, your tent floor, your stuff sacks, your firewood, your pack's rain cover. For breathable layers, combine a resin-based coat with a light commercial DWR refresher, and you will get 90% of the performance at 20% of the cost. Here is exactly what to do. You need a putty knife or a flathead screwdriver. You need a metal tin or an old soup can. You need a heat source, a camp stove, or a low kitchen burner. You need cheesecloth or a fine mesh strainer. And you need beeswax, available at any craft store for about $3 per ounce. Step 1. Locate a pine tree that is already producing resin. Look for visible sap deposits on the bark, which appear as amber or whitish globs. Ponderosa, longleaf, loblolly, and Scots pine are all excellent. Do not cut into a living tree. Harvest only the resin that has already flowed and hardened on the surface. Step 2. Use the putty knife to gently pry the hardened resin off the bark. Collect it in a container. You want roughly a quarter cup for your first batch. Step 3. Place the resin in your metal tin and heat it on low. It will melt at approximately 100 to 150 degrees Celsius. Stir gently. When fully liquid, pour it through the cheesecloth into a second container to remove bark, insects, and dirt. Step 4. Return the strained resin to heat. Add beeswax at a ratio of approximately 3 parts resin to 1 part beeswax. This creates a pliable, spreadable compound that will not crack when it cools. Stir until fully combined. This takes about 2 minutes. Step 5. While the mixture is still warm and liquid, apply it with a brush or cloth to your boots, tent seams, or gear fabric. Work it into seams and stitching. Let it cool and harden for at least 30 minutes. A man in northern Minnesota tested this method on a pair of 12-year-old leather hiking boots that had lost all their factory waterproofing. After one application of pine resin and beeswax compound, he hiked through 2 full days of rain along the Superior hiking trail. His feet stayed dry. He has not purchased a commercial waterproofing product since. That was 3 years ago. Total cost of the resin and beeswax treatment? Roughly 75 cents if you buy the beeswax. Free if you render your own. Compare that to $14 for a bottle of commercial boot waterproofer that lasts 1 or 2 treatments. 75 cents versus $14, and the 75-cent solution was used by the pharaohs. The Egyptians sealed tombs with it. The Ojibwe crossed the Great Lakes with it. The Chinese preserved buildings with it. Finnish scientists measured it at 130 degrees of water resistance. The USDA documented its waterproofing power for over a century. It kills 87% of the bacteria that cause wound infections in the field. It ignites in the rain when commercial fire starters fail. The science is settled. The history is undeniable. The evidence is overwhelming, and yet a $37 billion industry would rather sell you a plastic tube of petroleum gel than tell you about the amber gold dripping off the nearest pine tree. This knowledge did not disappear. It was buried under billions of dollars of marketing. 5,000 years of continuous human use, covered up by 60 years of outdoor retail expansion. Your great-grandmother knew, and now, so do you. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe and share it. Every share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon. What is inside weighs even heavier.